It's time for a new update on the front lines. A lot has happened. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is getting momentum and also in some unexpected areas. And at the same time, there is a lot of information that is vague or confusing, so it can be hard to keep the big picture. If we begin in the northern sector, then the situation is pretty much unchanged. I'm again using maps from the Institute for the Study of War. Belarus is still conducting military exercises and doing their best to tie up a lot of Ukrainian soldiers in the border region. And over in the Sumy region, there is still some shelling across the border from time to time, but nothing that indicates that there is going to be sort of more severe fighting anytime soon. So let's move on to Kherson. This is the area where Ukraine has been talking about a counteroffensive for a long time. And during August, there was a lot of confusion because from the outside, it was kind of hard to see that counteroffensive. And I think some of that confusion has come from the fact that Ukraine has sort of two somewhat contradicting goals with the counteroffensive in this area west of the Dnipro River. On the one hand, they want to liberate the areas, so that is to throw the Russians out. But on the other hand, they also want to use this opportunity to fight as many Russians as possible in this area. Because from a geographical point of view, this is an area that favors Ukraine. I made a video about that if you're interested, but the point is that Russia reinforced the area west of the Dnipro, so Ukraine can't make a quick counteroffensive. And that is actually fine for the Ukrainians because it means that they get to fight more Russians on this battlefield where they basically have all the advantages. Okay, so about 2 weeks ago, Ukraine started more offensive operations, and they are basically pushing from three different directions. They are attacking from the Mykolaiv direction here, and then they are attacking from the north over here, and then they are also attacking here on the middle. And that is significant because there is a pretty big river here called the Inkhulets, and if Ukraine were not attacking here on the middle, then that river would be a natural obstacle. And that would mean that Russia could relax a bit and concentrate their forces at the ends. But some months ago, I believe it was actually all the way back in May, Ukraine made an attack across the river and they got a small area of land close to a city called Davydiv Brid. This is what in military terms is called a bridgehead, and this is what now allows Ukraine to make this attack down the middle of the Russian-occupied area. What this does is that it forces Russia to fight in more directions, so they have to disperse their forces. At the same time, Ukraine is also still hitting the Russian supply lines. They have destroyed the three bridges that go across the Dnipro, and then they have also repeatedly been hitting the improvised bridges that Russia has been trying to build. And this means that Russia depends on an improvised ferry connection to get supplies across, but Ukraine has been hitting that as well. And this basically means that Russia is in a very bad position to sustain the fighting. We don't get that much information about the details of where the fighting is specifically happening, and that means that the map might not be entirely accurate. So you can find other maps where the Ukrainians have taken more territory. And that is, of course, also a question of what color you decide to make the areas where both sides are fighting, because in reality, there will be a kind of gray area between the red and the blue where nobody has control. But I think what I want to say is that the counteroffensive in Kherson is a pretty slow process because the main goal for the Ukrainians at this point is to destroy as many Russian forces as possible while keeping their own casualty numbers low. And they can do that because time is on their side, so there is no need to rush. Like, the longer the fighting goes on, the more supply constrained the Russians are going to be. So all the Ukrainians have to do is to keep the intensity high enough that the Russians will have a high consumption of ammunition and fuel, and then eventually they're going to win the battle. It might be a process that could take several months, but that is fine for the Ukrainians because time is on their side. Then let's move on to the Kharkiv region. This is the big topic at the moment because a lot is happening. Ukraine has conquered territory very quickly here, and it is a process that is still unfolding. So whatever I say here, it's basically going to be old news very soon. But what has happened is that Ukraine took the city of Balakleya, and then very quickly after that, they have moved on to Shevchenkovo. And it looks like they are going for the city of Kupiansk. The significance of this is that this will more or less stop the supply lines down toward the city of Izium. This is a city that Russia has used to launch attacks into Ukrainian territory for months. There will still be some possibilities of getting supplies in here south of the Oskil water reservoir, but Ukraine could close that hole as well. And that would then cut off the Russian forces in the Izium area, and that would be a huge loss for Russia. So the operation here is moving very quickly. And that is because it is basically the opposite situation as in Kherson. Time is not on Ukraine's side here. They have spotted an opportunity, but they have to be quick for it to work. Like if they are too slow, then Russia can adapt and they can reinforce the area. So that is why things are happening so quickly. Finally, I think we should also look at the eastern part of Donbass. Actually, there isn't that much new here. Russia is pushing hard along the front line from Seversk and Bakhmut down toward the city of Donetsk. And this has been Russia's response sort of to the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kherson, where they have tried to force Ukraine to move soldiers to this area instead to reinforce their positions. But Ukraine has been holding out pretty well. Okay, so what is the big picture? I think we can understand the Ukrainian counteroffensive as sort of conceptually very different depending on which area we're looking at. In this area west of the Dnipro River, it is a carefully planned process that is moving along slowly and steadily. And Ukraine has spent months preparing how to do this and how they want things to play out. And over in this area, what we are seeing is a much more opportunistic kind of thing. Like the counteroffensive that we are seeing in the Kharkiv region is not something that you can plan and predict the same way that you could around Kherson. So Ukraine knew that Russia would move a lot of forces to Kherson to prevent losing that territory, and they could sort of anticipate that this could create vulnerabilities for Russia in other areas, so they could have a general idea that they want to exploit the possibilities that show up. But there was no way that Ukraine could know that Russia would have a vulnerability in exactly this area north of Izium. That was just a possibility that offered itself, and Ukraine seized the moment. And that is perhaps the most significant point, that Ukraine is apparently strong enough to be on the offensive in multiple places at once. It is not just a counteroffensive around Kherson and then a defensive fighting everywhere else. So I think we are going to see more of this going forward, that if Russia shows vulnerabilities in some area, then Ukraine is going to take advantage of that. Okay, if you found the video interesting or helpful, please give it a like. That will help bring it in front of more people. And also you can subscribe to my channel, and if you click on that little bell icon, then you will get a notification when I publish new videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next time.